Hey, what's up folks, how's it going? This is Watch. Hope you guys are all doing well. And today we're going to be taking a look at the Nintendo Switch Lite. I've been testing this thing out for a few weeks, and what we're going to do is specifically talk about the advantages, disadvantages that this thing has compared to the full-size Switch. Now, the Switch originally came out in 2017. They recently just refreshed it mid-August of 2019. We're going to be comparing that specific refreshed new version of the Switch against this thing. Big differences, obviously the portable form factor. It's $100 cheaper, but with the portability aspect of things, there are some limitations as well as some advantages that we'll talk about. So if you're interested to see how the Switch Lite compares against the full-size Switch and to see which one's the better overall gaming console, is a perfect video for you. And let's get right into this comparison. Now, the first thing about the Switch Lite is, just like the name implies, we're looking at a smaller version of the full-size Switch, so you don't have the detachable Joy-Cons, which results in a slightly smaller form factor, which definitely looks a little bit more sleeker, slightly more portable. I still don't think that the Switch Lite is fully pocketable, but definitely more pocketable than the full-size Switch, which looks very awkward in the pockets. Now, probably the biggest difference is in the hand. The Switch Lite definitely feels a lot more lighter. It's only weighing around 276 grams versus the Switch with the Joy-Cons is just under 400 grams, and it definitely feels less flimsy, definitely more durable. It has a matte finish at the back, so it's definitely not as big of a fingerprint magnet as the Switch. It also doesn't feature a kickstand, so it's definitely a lot more kid-friendly and generally more durable for portability's sake. Now, another cool thing about the Switch Lite is that even though it's called the Lite, from a performance and hardware perspective, internally it's pretty much identical to the specifications that we find on the full-size Switch. So we still have the same resolution screen, which is 1280 by 720, but because it's a little bit smaller, the pixel density goes up by a slight margin. So from a PPI count, you're looking at 267 on the Switch Lite versus about 236 on the full-size Switch, which has a slightly larger display. And the screen quality itself, in terms of brightness, color rendition, and black levels, is pretty much identical to the standard Switch, so you're not going to see a big difference there. Furthermore, since the bezels on the Switch Lite are a little bit thinner profile and it's not as bulky, I definitely think from a handheld experience, it's definitely the superior device. Definitely feels a little bit more immersive and seamless compared to the full-size Switch. Additionally, in terms of the internal performance, we're looking at the same exact custom NVIDIA Tegra architecture in terms of its CPU and GPU combination, so there's not going to be a difference in terms of graphical performance, overall loading speed. They both have the exact same wireless chip for AC Wi-Fi, Bluetooth 4.1, as well as near-field communication technology. Furthermore, the Switch Lite also has a full-size USB Type-C connection for charging, a 3.5mm headphone jack, as well as the same quality stereo speakers found on the full-size Switch. And in terms of internal storage, both have 32 gigabytes of internal memory, as well as user expandable memory via the micro SD expansion slot. Beyond that, the Switch Lite also has the full-size game cartridge slot for playing physical copies of the Switch games. Otherwise, you can download games via the Nintendo Store online. And in terms of game compatibility, technically the Switch Lite will pretty much work with the 2,000 plus game library for the Switch. The only real limitations is games that really utilize the tablet or TV mode on the full-size Switch, such as Mario Party 10, or other games that utilize the Joy-Cons to some extent. Now, you can actually use the Joy-Cons with the Switch Lite as well as the Nintendo Pro controller, or perhaps even other third-party wireless Bluetooth controllers, which is kind of cool, but you'll be huddled around this tiny 5.5-inch screen if you have a bunch of people playing multiplayer, which definitely can be cumbersome, and there's no way at the current moment to output the Switch Lite to a larger 1080p display TV. And that's one of the key differences between the Switch Lite and the full-size Switch, is the fact that you have the versatility of the full-size Switch to play in handheld mode, tablet mode, as well as TV mode, and it can render out 1080p at 60 FPS, versus we don't have that capability on the Switch Lite because it's really limited to playing games on the built-in 720p display. Furthermore, in terms of the gamepad button arrangements, you're looking at pretty much the exact same number of controls found on the Joy-Cons on the full-size Switch. And in terms of the tactile sensation of the buttons, it has that traditional clicky, slightly slightly mechanical feel that you get from Nintendo gamepads, which is awesome to see. The size of all the buttons, triggers, as well as thumbsticks are pretty much identical. The only exception is the directional pad on the Switch Lite is more of a plus shape, more of a traditional Nintendo style stuff that you would see in the old NES, and it feels really nice. There's really no complaints in terms of that, but some people may prefer the layout on the full-size Switch, which is individually laid out for the D-pad, may provide a little bit more precision, especially for fighting games and things like that. I didn't really have any major issues because I never had any issues in the old school consoles that had this style of D-pad. Furthermore, in terms of durability, the original 2017 Switch had a number of issues in terms of sticky buttons, faulty analog thumbsticks with dust getting into them, and just issues with longevity and durability. Both of these two consoles that we have over here are brand new, so they feel really amazing and quite solid, but we'll see how they age. And Nintendo did address some of the build quality concerns of the analog thumbsticks and buttons with both of these two new generation consoles, and we'll see how they fare up in the future as they age. Now, as we mentioned earlier, we're actually testing out the new version of the Switch, which got a slight refresh mid-August of 2019, and the big difference between this and the original 2017 version is that the battery performance has been improved to some extent. We're looking at almost 2 more hours of a battery life on average compared to the original 2017 Switch. Now, in terms of the battery capacity itself on the new generation Switch, we're looking at 4310 milliamp hours. On the Switch Lite, it's about 3570 milliamp hours. Both have a 3-hour charging time, and in terms of battery performance, according to Nintendo, it ranges anywhere between 3 to 7 hours on the Switch Lite versus about 4.5 to 9 hours on the new generation full-size Switch. Now, we performed our own battery life test in which we played Fast RMX. It's kind of a Wipeout style racing game. It's pretty graphically intensive. We cranked the brightness to full on both consoles, and we got a total runtime of about 4 hours and 41 minutes on the new generation full-size Switch, and about 3 hours and 23 minutes on the Switch Lite. Furthermore, in terms of media consumption, we did also a YouTube video playback test in which we got a total runtime of about 7 hours and 20 minutes on the full-size Switch and about 5 hours and 48 minutes on the Switch Lite. So in terms of battery life and performance from a portability standpoint, it looks like ironically the standard Switch is actually going to be the better performing device. Now, in summary, I definitely think that there's a big elephant in the room with the Switch Lite. From a price perspective and from a hardware perspective, it's definitely a great deal since it has the same capabilities as the full-size console, just in a cheaper price tag. There's definitely something that Nintendo did to kind of handicap this thing that would kind of almost negate the purpose of having a full-size Switch, and that's the fact it doesn't have any kind of video outputting capabilities. It does not fit in the Switch dock, which has a completely different dimensions, and as of this point, there's no cables or adapters that will go from USB Type-C into HDMI that will make this thing output to a TV, because if that was possible and if Nintendo gave it that capability, it would definitely take away from the full-size Switch from a big extent, since it's coming at $100 cheaper. It's a better, more convenient form factor, and there would be no disadvantage and limitation of just having a mobile platform only. But since that is the case, it definitely keeps the full-size Switch relevant in that circumstance, and as we mentioned before, the battery life is better and certainly has the better kind of multi-platform capabilities for having multiple players and things like that. This is kind of a one-man kind of show, although you can still, as we mentioned before, hook it up with controllers. You're always going to be limited to this 5.5-inch screen. Now, as a portable gaming device, this is the best thing that Nintendo has done thus far, and probably going to eventually replace the 2DS, 3DS, and everything like that. We'll have a comparison of the new 2DS XL versus this thing, so definitely check out that video in the description down below or on the card once that video becomes available. In the meantime, definitely love to hear your thoughts and opinion on the Switch Lite. Are you going to be getting one? I definitely think that it's going to be a huge seller in terms of this holiday season going forward. Definitely probably the most popular device that most kids and things like that are going to want. Certainly I'm a big fan of it right now. Just playing on the go with a awesome mobile platform like this is Definitely worth the $200 in my opinion. But again, love to hear your thoughts. If you have any specific questions, let me know. Check out the description down below for more details about all the products we talked about. If you're interested in getting the Switch, you can go through our Amazon affiliate link. Helps us out a little bit. And I definitely want to give you guys a huge shout out for supporting the channel throughout the years. Without you, none of this would be possible. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you later. Take care.